Hi, I'm Chris from Inside the Recording Studio podcast, and in today's short video, I'm going to give you some pointers of things to think about when you're programming your own drums. Let's take a look and listen. For today's demonstration, I am using the Logic built-in drummer, just a standard kit I pulled up here, and the only modification I've done is with the input mapping here. Mod wheel controls the hi-hat opening. We'll see why that's important later on. But here's a part that I have programmed, and it sounds like this. So, not super exciting, but more important, it has that very robotic feel. Everything is hitting at 127, so there's no dynamics going on here. So it has a very sort of stiff kind of feeling and kind of unnatural. So let's fix that. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm changing the velocity layers on some of the hit, the velocity levels, that should be. And if you're not used to looking at Logic, the darker the color here notates a harder hit. You can see the levels underneath here as well. But what I'm doing is I'm paying attention to when the drummer might hit a little bit harder, maybe on the downbeat, something like that, and on the upbeats, maybe not so hard. But now we end up with a part with some adjusted velocities here, and it sounds like this. Definitely a lot better. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to humanize this performance a little bit. What do I mean by that? Well, now what I'm going to do is instead of having everything hard quantized right to the grid, I'm going to nudge some of these notes, and I've done that in Logic here already. Note here is that you have to be subtle with this kind of thing. If you get a little bit too aggressive, it just sounds like the drummer just has bad time. And that's not what we want here. We just want it to sound like, so it's not exactly robotic again. So now we end up with a performance that sounds like this. So definitely getting there. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to modulate the hi-hat a little bit. And what I've done is I've drawn in some modulation data. So now what I want you to listen for is the hi-hat opening and closing a little bit. And what that's going to do is it's just going to emulate how a drummer's foot might not be locked down on the hi-hat. It might open and close a little bit during the performance, make it sound a little bit more natural. The only time it wouldn't do that is really if it just really tight clamped down. So let's listen with that hi-hat, and we get a part that sounds like this. So there you go. A few pointers to think about. You want to think about your velocity levels. You want to think about the timing, opening and closing a hi-hat, either with modulation, like in this case, or with a different sample. And if you spend a little time doing this, your performances and programmed drum parts are going to sound a lot more natural. All right? Hopefully that's been helpful. I'll see you next time. Cheers.